History isn't just about presidents and wars. Sometimes it's about the chaos on the sidelines. Mascots kidnapped, trophies made of pigs, corn stalks and broken furniture, games played in fog, blizzards, and even on frozen lakes. This is History on the Margins, a brand new podcast where we dive into the strangest corners of the past. And for our very first episode, we're starting with a special teaser, right in time for the kickoff of the college football season. Because sometimes the weirdest stories are the ones you never learned in school. College sports. The land of marching bands, painted faces, and mascots that look like they were dreamed up during a fever induced by too much Red Bull and midterms. But beyond the touchdowns and slam dunks lies a hidden world, where rival schools steal live animals, referees forget how to count, and entire football games take place in conditions that would even make penguins say, "Nope, I'm out." Today, we're diving headfirst into the strangest, wildest, and most gloriously unhinged stories from the history of college sports. And trust me, you're not ready for the Stanford tree. College sports aren't just about who wins or loses. They're about culture, tradition, and occasionally, chaos that borders on performance art. You've got mascots getting kidnapped like it's an Ocean's 11 sequel nobody asked for, rivalry trophies that look like your grandpa's garage sale leftovers, and entire universities saying, "You know what would be great? Let's put a live bear right next to the marching band." Only in America, folks. Only in America. So grab your foam finger, your school pride, and maybe a tranquilizer dart for when the mascot inevitably escapes. Because today, we're heading into the wild, bizarre, and utterly ridiculous margins of college sports history. Okay, let's start with the unsung heroes of college sports, the mascots. They're supposed to embody the school spirit, inspire the crowd, take a few awkward photos with children who are already terrified of clowns. But in reality, mascots spend half of their time being kidnapped, punched, or just losing their minds. Take the University of Texas. Their mascot is Bevo, a live longhorn steer, and rivals have tried, more than once, to nab him. Which, by the way, is insane. That's not like sneaking a garden gnome off your neighbor's porch. That's stealing a 1,700-pound slab of horned beef that's basically a car with legs. But that didn't stop Texas A&M students who once branded 13-0 into Bevo's hide after beating Texas, which sounds like a prank if your idea of a prank is also a felony and a rodeo at the same time. And then there's Colorado's Buffalo Ralphie. Students thought it was a good idea to have people, actual human beings, run onto the field holding ropes attached to a full-grown buffalo. And every year, Ralphie's just one mood swing away from turning the 50-yard line into a triage unit. But sometimes, the mascots don't need kidnappers or rival schools to cause chaos. Sometimes, they just do it themselves. Like the Stanford tree. Yes, tree. Not a fearsome creature or mythical beast, just a tree with a drinking problem. In 2006, the student inside was sidelined mid-season after testing at 0.157 blood alcohol during a game. And yes, it happened again, because apparently, even a dancing tree can get into trouble. And then there's the Oregon Duck, who once threw wings with Houston's Cougar mascot. Full-on brawl. Imagine going into a football game and the highlight isn't the touchdown, it's Donald Duck and Tony the Tiger's cousin going full WWE in the end zone. I'd pay good money for that pay-per-view. So yeah, school pride is great, but maybe, just maybe, don't let people who can't keep a cactus alive babysit a live buffalo. So alright, we've covered the mascots, but what about the games themselves? College sports are already weird, but throw in bad weather, bad refereeing, or just bad ideas, and things get spectacularly stupid. Let's start in 1934 in Madison, Wisconsin, where some genius thought, hey, you know what would make football better? Turning it into hockey. The University of Wisconsin held its annual winter carnival and decided to stage a full football game on Lake Mendota. That's right, on the ice. Players slipped, slid, fell on their faces, and generally looked like Bambi trying to walk for the first time. They tried to fix the problem by giving the players rubber-soled shoes instead of cleats, which didn't help at all. Picture a bunch of linemen running in bowling shoes on a hockey rink. This was less football and more interpretive dance about frostbite. Then there's the games where Mother Nature just said, let's see how dumb these humans really are. Case in point, the 1962 Gotham Bowl at Yankee Stadium. Miami versus Nebraska. Except, nobody could actually see it. A thick fog rolled in, mixed with snow, and visibility went straight to zero. Broadcasters were literally guessing who had the ball. Fans in the stands had no clue if they were cheering for a touchdown or a guy tripping over his own shoelaces. Miami's quarterback even admitted he couldn't even see his receivers until they were practically standing in his lap, which, is not ideal when you're trying to play football. Nebraska still won 36-34, but for the crowd, it was basically a $10 ticket to watch ghosts play in the mist. And that's not the only one. College football has had snow bowls, mud bowls, and probably an unofficial swamp bowl somewhere in Florida. Honestly, some of these games should have been canceled, but college football doesn't cancel for anything. Blizzard? Strap in. Ice storm? Grab your bowling shoes. Fog so thick the quarterback can't find his receivers? Just yell louder, maybe the sound waves will help. Alright, we've covered rogue mascots and Blizzard games, but college sports has another secret weapon in the chaos department. Rules that don't make sense, refs who forgot how to count, and rivalry traditions that make you wonder if the schools just raided a junkyard and said, yep, that's our trophy now. Let's start with the infamous fifth down game. October 6th, 1990, Colorado versus Missouri. Late in the game, the officials completely lost track of downs after a clock-stopping spike. So instead of fourth down, Colorado got a bonus play, a literal fifth down. On that extra shot, quarterback Charles Johnson ran it in for a touchdown. Colorado won 33-31 and later claimed a share of the national championship. Missouri, meanwhile, lost because the refs decided football was now a five-down sport. Somewhere John Madden probably screamed into a bucket of wings. And then there are the rivalry trophies. Because apparently, just winning a football game isn't enough. No, you've got to hand each other cursed objects that look like they were stolen from your grandpa's barn. Michigan and Minnesota play for the Little Brown Jug, which is exactly what it sounds like. A water jug a coach left behind in 1903, now treated like a sacred relic. Indiana and Michigan State battle for the old brass spittoon, a giant brass bucket used for chewing tobacco spit. Nothing says school pride like hoisting up a community spit cup. In Oregon versus Oregon State, they used to play for the Platypus Trophy, a wooden statue created in 1959 because a platypus looks kind of like a cross between a beaver and a duck. It actually disappeared for decades, like the world's least valuable missing artifact, and only resurfaced in the 2000s. But those are tame compared to others. Iowa and Minnesota play for Floyd of Rosedale, a bronze pig statue. The original was a live pig, bet between governors in 1935. Now he's immortalized in metal to the envy of young pigs everywhere. Nebraska and Minnesota play for the $5 Bits of Broken Chair Trophy, born from a 2014 Twitter joke. Somebody actually built a giant broken chair, painted it in school colors, and suddenly, it was a trophy. It's the first meme trophy in history. Northern Illinois and Ball State, they battle over the bronze stalk. Yes, a bronze corn stalk. Because nothing says Midwest quite like a trophy made of corn. And then there's the old oaken bucket, the prize for Indiana versus Purdue. A literal bucket pulled out of an old farm in 1925. Each year, the winner gets to add a bronze link to the chain attached to it. At this point, it's less trophy, more medieval weaponry. So yeah, forget Super Bowl rings or Heisman trophies. In college football, you could end up celebrating with a jug, a spittoon, a pig statue, or $5 worth of broken furniture. Honestly, the trophies aren't priceless heirlooms. They're more like yard sale rejects that somehow became sacred. And honestly, that's kind of why I love them more. Alright, so we've covered mascots, freak weather, and weird trophies. But let's talk about the other MVPs of college sports, the live animals. Because for some reason, universities across America decided the best way to hype up a crowd was to put large, unpredictable wildlife on the sidelines of a football game. Because what could possibly go wrong? Baylor University, for example, has a live bear as its mascot. Not a guy in a bear suit, a bear, on campus. And it used to occasionally end up on the field. Imagine trying to psych yourself up for kickoff while there's a literal apex predator 5 feet from the cheerleaders. Now it's kept safely on campus in a special habitat and no longer brought onto the field. Then you've got LSU's mascot, Mike the Tiger. They've been bringing a live tiger to games since 1936. At one point, they wheeled his cage right up to the opposing team's locker room, which is basically psychological warfare. Forget pep talks. Nothing gets in your head quite like hearing a tiger growl right before kickoff. And then, of course, there's Florida. Their mascot is the Gator. And while they don't bring one to the games anymore, for obvious we value our limbs reasons, it hasn't stopped students from smuggling baby alligators into dorms and tailgates. Because nothing screams school pride quite like losing a finger to a reptile in your fraternity's backyard pool. And sometimes, those animals decide they've had enough. Ralphie the buffalo at Colorado has broken free, occasionally dragging handlers like rag dolls. Uga the bulldog has slipped leashes only to nearly get skewered by Texas's Brevo at the 2019 Sugar Bowl. Horses like Oklahoma State's Bullet have spooked and bolted. Honestly, it's amazing these games don't end with ESPN cutting to a commercial saying, "We'll be right back after the buffalo calms down." College sports scandals are nothing new. Usually it's recruiting violations, shady boosters, or someone forgetting to pay for 300 hamburgers on the team credit card. But some scandals over the years have been less illegal and more creatively stupid. Case in point, Harvard football. Back in 1941, Harvard students pulled a prank on rival Yale by sending fake telegrams to Yale players. The messages, pretending to be from their coach, gave them false scouting information and bad strategy moves. Imagine thinking you're getting top secret game plans, and it's actually just your rival's frat house with too much time in a Western Union account. Harvard still lost that game, by the way, which just goes to show, even Ivy League scams aren't guaranteed to work. Then there are the trick plays. College football is basically a laboratory for bad ideas. Like the old hidden ball trick, where a player literally stuffs the football under his jersey and casually strolls past defenders. Yes, that actually happened. Most famously in the early 1900s before rules banned it. Because apparently, you have to clarify in the rulebook, no smuggling footballs in your shirt like you've been shoplifting at Walmart. And of course, the scandal that almost killed college football entirely in 1905. That season alone saw 19 players die and over 100 seriously injured. Football back then was basically rugby with fewer rules and more ways to cave in your skull. Things actually got so bad that President Theodore Roosevelt stepped in and told universities, "Clean this up or the sport is gone." Imagine needing the President of the United States to stop your pastime from turning into the Hunger Games. This eventually led to the creation of the NCAA. So yes, the same guy who gave us national parks also saved football from being a nationwide murder spree. So yeah, scandals in college sports aren't just about money and cheating. Sometimes they're about prank telegrams, illegal shirt smuggling, and presidents playing referee. So what have we learned today? College sports aren't just about the scoreboard. They're about chaos, glorious, unhinged chaos. It's a world where mascots get kidnapped like they're starring in an R-rated Pixar movie, where teams play football on frozen lakes wearing bowling shoes, where national championships can be decided because referees forgot how to count to 4. And of course, where victory might be hoisting a jug, a spittoon, a pig statue, or if you're really lucky, a broken chair born from a Twitter joke. And if you think that's absurd, let me remind you of the great mascot heist of 1947. Students from the University of Virginia kidnapped Maryland's beloved turtle mascot, Testudo. Not the live version, the 300-pound bronze statue. Maryland students launched a rescue mission, and it turned into an all-out riot. We're talking hundreds of students brawling, police being called in, and even tear gas deployed, all over a turtle statue. That's right. A turtle caused more chaos than some entire football seasons. And yes, Testudo was eventually returned and literally bolted down so it could never be kidnapped again. And yeah, for all the scandals and the rivalries and the wild traditions, that's the magic of college sports. They're unpredictable, they're ridiculous, and they've given us some of the strangest stories in American history. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about touchdowns or trophies, it's about memories. The kind that make you shake your head and say, wait, that really happened? College sports. The only place where I can feel better about my own bad life choices, because at least I've never lost a jug to Minnesota. Thanks for joining me for this tour of the bizarre and the ridiculous. This has been History on the Margins. The full season kicks off next week, where we'll start by digging into the history of bathing. Yeah, it's gonna get gross.